Thank you all for your patience. Welcome. We're very glad to have you all here today at Brigham and Women's Hospital. My name is Erin McDonough. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communication and Public Affairs. Just want to go over logistics a little bit before we get started. You're going to hear from two folks today. Dr. Eric Bloomin is an orthopedic surgeon. He's been involved in Heather's care since her arrival here. And then we're going to hear from Heather Abbott, our courageous patient, truly inspirational person. Following the speakers, we are going to take questions. I'm going to be repeating your questions for a couple of reasons. One, we're webcasting, so the folks that are watching via webcast around the country need to hear what you've asked in order to understand the answer. Two, Heather's having a bit of difficulty hearing following the blast, so we want to make sure she hears your questions. So have patience with the process. I know it's a little bit irritating. And also try and be as concise as you possibly can with your questions so I don't have to remember a lot to repeat. As you all know, Heather is recovering. Her most recent surgery was on Monday. So her nurse, Melissa, is here. And I'm going to ask Melissa to give me the high sign when she thinks enough is enough. And if any of you know Brigham nurses, when they say jump, we say how high and how fast. So I'm going to keep an eye on Melissa. There will be no one-on-one interviews after the conference with Dr. Bloomin or with Heather. So please make sure you get your answers to your questions here. And then when we are finished, I'm going to ask you all to just pull back to allow Heather and her family to exit, and then we'll take care of whatever you need logistically afterwards, okay? Any logistical questions? Let's get started with Dr. Eric Bloomin.
Hi, everybody.
Do you want to come up to the podium just so they can hear you through the mic?
Sure.
Thank you. That one's better? Okay, stay there.
So I've been asked initially to sort of provide a synopsis of Heather's hospital course, and we'll start with that.
Dr. Bloomin, could you pull the mic a little bit closer? You can take it off the stand if you like.
So Heather came to the Brigham and was brought to the emergency department on Marathon Monday and was evaluated there by many teams, many people, emergency department, general surgery, plastic surgery, orthopedics, and I know I'm leaving people out, but a whole host of people in the emergency department. And she was then triaged to the OR, to the operating room. And that was to both to clean her wounds and evaluate the wounds and treat her wounds. And one of the things that Heather had, in addition to blast injuries, one of the components of her injury was a vascular injury. And our vascular surgeons did an excellent, amazing job right off the bat and did what we call a revascularization to restore blood flow to her foot so that limb salvage would be an option, because without blood flow you can't save a limb. And again, she was treated by plastic surgery, orthopedics, and the general surgeons all simultaneously. And she was then, that was Monday, and on Wednesday she went back for a second evaluation to make sure that the tissues that looked viable on Marathon Monday were indeed staying viable and still had good blood supply and had not been compromised further. And this was an evolutionary process that happened on Wednesday and also Friday, and that really took us to Monday, a week from Marathon Monday, when she underwent a below knee amputation. Okay. And do you want to talk a little bit about the course from here? What we expect in terms of recovery and? Right. The below knee amputees, in Heather's case, have a very much accelerated recovery relative to some people who undergo limb salvage procedures. So she's going to go to rehab as soon as she feels she's ready and we feel she's ready to make sure that she's ready to go home. And it's sort of an interim stage between coming from the hospital before going home, just to check to make sure that everything she needs to do and her caregivers need to do at home can be done successfully. And that can take a variable period of time depending on the patient's condition, what sort of home situation they have, and other variables as well. And she will then come back and see me in the office. I hope that she'll be out of rehab by the time her first office visit comes upon us. And then we will look at her wounds, make sure that they're healing properly, and get her started on physical therapy. About 6 weeks from her last procedure, we expect to move her to a temporary prosthesis and start her walking. And that will take, she will continue walking and learning how to walk with a prosthesis, building up strength, endurance, balance, and all of the things necessary to be a below-the-knee amputee successfully. And then hopefully around 4 to 6 months, she'll move into a permanent prosthesis and then really up her activity levels and hopefully move to doing everything she was able to do prior to Marathon Monday.
So Heather, it's your turn. I'm just going to hand you the microphone. Sure. So you can make sure
Well, thank you everyone for coming today. I received several calls from probably some of you in the room, and my family and friends have as well. But I thought that this would be a good venue to sort of answer any questions, overlapping types of questions all at once. I thought that before I saw all these cameras and all these people. But I think it is a good idea. So I kind of wanted to just share my message with you before I answered any questions. And what that really is the surprise and just overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of support and patience and just general interest and caring in my situation by my friends and my family and by people I don't even know. If someone had told me that I was going to have half a leg, basically, at the age of 38 before this happened, I think I would have never believed it. I think I would have been devastated. And I really haven't had a moment yet of being devastated because I've gotten so much support from the hospital. I mean, the hospital has brought in individuals who are in the same situation as I am. They live normal lives. They were able to tell me about that, which has been great. My family has been here with me since I got here. They've been staying overnight. I live down in Newport, Rhode Island. So they've been staying and supporting me every single day. I have had a slew of friends come to visit me every day. My room is never empty. So it's been very overwhelming, and I couldn't have imagined this type of response to my having the type of injury like this. So although it's something that certainly I wouldn't wish upon myself or anyone else, you know, it's really not as bad as I thought it could have been. I really think I'm going to be able to live my life in a normal way eventually when I get that permanent prosthesis. The state offices in Rhode Island have been great. Everyone has reached out to me, so I feel very supported. I think I'm one of the few victims of the bombing that is not from Massachusetts. But again, you know, no worries for me there. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say and kind of let people know. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, questions? Yes, right here.
Heather, when you say state offices in Rhode Island reached out, could you tell me who you heard from in Rhode Island, and also where you expect to go for rehab when you go to Abbott?
So Heather, I'm going to repeat the question. So the question is, who have you heard from the state offices in Rhode Island, and where do you anticipate going for your rehabilitation?
Okay, I've heard from Congressman Langevin, Senator Reed, and Governor Chafee. I'm planning to go to Spalding for my rehabilitation.
Next question. Yes, Allie.
Hi, Heather. Could you talk a little bit about that process of seeing your foot or your leg? I read in the AP that you hadn't looked at your foot. But could you talk about that decision-making process for you to amputate?
So the question is, could you talk a little bit about the decision-making process to amputate?
Dr. Bloomin kind of gave me the rundown, as did several other doctors, on the choice I had. And basically, it was whether to keep my leg, the rest, my foot actually is where the injury occurred, or to amputate sort of below the knee. And it certainly was a difficult decision, but when I weighed the pros and cons, I think this was the best option for me. Dr. Bloomin had explained to me that if I kept my foot, it was very badly mangled. It would probably, most likely, never fully heal or be functional. It would likely be shorter. One of my legs would likely be shorter than the other. And I wouldn't be able to live the lifestyle that I did prior to the injury. So although the prosthetic is going to be something that I'll have to get used to, I think I have a better chance of living my life the way I used to with that.
This next question, yes, here in the second row.
You're talking about a better chance to live your life. What are some of the things that you're hoping to be able to do in the coming months, coming years?
So the question is, what are some of the things you're hoping to do in the coming months, in the coming years?
In the coming months, probably not much other than walking. You know, I talked to somebody yesterday, actually. One of the doctors came in to see me, and he was asking me what kind of activities I do. And I told him that I like to run, I like to do Zumba classes, aerobics classes, that sort of thing. And I told him about plans I had this summer to do yoga paddleboarding, and that I was kind of disappointed that I wouldn't be able to do it this year. Some friends and I had wanted to sign up for it, and he said, "You'll be doing it next year, don't worry about it." So I'm not too worried that I won't be able to maintain the same type of lifestyle.
Yes, right here.
Heather, could you take us back to the day this happened and what happened and what you remember?
Heather, could you take them back through the day this happened, what happened, and what you remember?
Sure. I was up with a bunch of my friends from the Newport area. We usually take the train on Patriots Day from Providence to Boston and watch the Red Sox game, and then go over to the bar called Forum. It's been a tradition for us. And one of our friends works at Forum as a bartender. She happened to be working that day, so we had made plans to go there and meet some other friends there. When we left the game a little bit early, some of us split up. A group of us got to the bar Forum a little earlier than two of my girlfriends and me. When we got there, we were standing in line outside, waiting to get in. The bouncer was checking people's IDs, and I was the last of the three of us in line. As we were standing there, a loud noise went off, and I remember turning around and looking and seeing smoke and seeing people screaming, and it immediately reminded me of 9/11, something I'd seen on TV. It just all happened so quickly that when I turned around, the second blast had already happened, and it blew a bunch of us into the bar. And I suppose it hit me because I was the last one. I was on the ground. Everybody was running to the back of the bar, to the exit. And I felt like my foot was on fire. I knew I couldn't stand up. And I didn't know what to do. I was just screaming, "Somebody please help me." And I was thinking, who's going to help me? I mean, everybody else is running for their lives. And to my surprise, and from what I'm learning now, I'm kind of just learning how I was sort of rescued out of there. There were 2 women and 2 men involved in helping me get out of the bar and into an ambulance. The first woman, I believe, was someone from the Joe Andruzzi Foundation, and she had initially seen me and helped me get, tried to help drag me. And then a gentleman who I later learned was Matt Chatham helped me, took me up the stairs and actually carried me outside. He and his wife were attending to me, as well as another member of the Ambrosi Association. And they wouldn't leave my side until they knew I was safe in the ambulance, along with the friends that I had attended the game with that day. I've talked to him briefly, and I'm actually supposed to meet him at some point, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then I was put in the ambulance with other individuals. I looked to my side, and there were other people there in the ambulance as well. It was very scary. I didn't know, if what was going to happen to me, if it was just my foot that was injured. I asked the EMT to call my mom, and He called her. I only knew her home phone number, so luckily she happened to be home. And I heard him tell her to go to Brigham and Women's. And that's pretty much all I remember about that evening.
Next question. Let's just go over here.
Heather, I wonder how much you've been thinking about the suspects in this and what your thoughts might be now about naming the suspect.
So the question to Heather is, curious what you're thinking about the suspect and what you're thinking about the remaining suspect.
I honestly, it's funny, I've been asked that question before, and I haven't thought much about them at all. I don't even know how to pronounce their names. I haven't watched TV since the incident. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of helping me get through this, to just focus on my recovery and, how to proceed with my life. I'm sure at some point I will be interested in the details and have an opinion about, the individuals that did this. But I just haven't let my mind go there at all.
Yes, right here.
Heather, could you get back to talking about the decision process? Could you talk about your emotions during that? And did you reach a point where you just had to decide, I'm going to do this and not look back?
Yeah.
So let me just repeat the question. Sorry, Heather, for the people listening online. So the question was, can you talk a little bit about the emotion around the decision for amputation? And did you reach a point where you just made the decision and decided you wouldn't look back?
I guess that's what I did. As I said to myself, I need to make a decision, and the best case scenario seems to be to have the amputation. As unlikely as that sounded, I didn't think that would be what I would be saying to myself, but it really was. So I just went with that decision. I had a lot of people who supported it. In fact, I didn't have any doctors or friends or family who said they thought I was making a mistake. So it was a decision that I almost felt like I didn't have a choice. It was what I really needed to do. I just tried not to think about it too much as I was going into the operating room, that when I was going to come out, I wasn't going to have a whole leg anymore. And it's been, difficult. But I know that, it's going to only be difficult for a short period of time, and eventually things will get better.
Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what your expectations are from the One Fund and the cost of prosthetics and how it's affected you financially and getting through this going forward?
So that's a big question, a lot of questions in a question. So the question was about the One Fund, which I'm not even sure Heather's aware of because she hasn't been watching the news, and the financial impact of an injury like this and prosthetics. I don't even know if you want to.
I've heard of the One Fund. I don't really know a whole lot about it. I don't know how they plan to distribute the money amongst the victims of the attack, and honestly haven't really thought about it very much. The cost of prosthetics, there have been so many different organizations that have come forward to offer their assistance in paying for those. So I've been trying to look at some of those options that have been presented. I realize that they only last a certain period of time, and that I'm going to have them the rest of my life, and then they're certainly not inexpensive. But I haven't really given it all that much thought.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to also mention that Heather's friends have established a fund for her, and on the fact sheet that you received, if you didn't get one, on your way out, grab one, is the address for that, and we'd certainly appreciate anything you can do to promote Heather's fund. Yes.
Heather, you mentioned that the hospital had brought in people who have gone through similar situations. Can you talk a little bit about what they said to you? And also, have you had a chance to talk to any of the other folks who were injured as well?
So it's a two-part question. Could you talk a little bit about the conversations with the other amputees that the hospital brought in to talk with you as you were making your decision? And then have you talked to any of the other victims of the bombing?
I haven't talked to any of the other victims at all. One of them actually is a friend of mine. So at some point I'd be interested in talking to her. I think she's been very busy. She had an above-the-knee amputation. She wasn't with me that day, but she is a friend of mine. So I'm certainly anxious to talk to her and others who are in the same situation I am. As far as I'm sorry, the other part of the question?
The other part of the question was the folks that came in who are amputees to talk with you about what their lifestyle's like. How were those conversations?
Some of them came in, like I had a couple people talk to me about the fact that they were not willing to give up their foot at the point where they had to make the decision that I had to make. and how they really regretted that decision because it was years of pain and unnecessary sort of suffering for them. So, that kind of helped me with the decision, hearing different people say, sort of support what the doctors here were telling me. Most of the people that I've spoken with have had amputations related to motorcycle accidents, or some received amputations for incidents that happened in Iraq or Afghanistan. And they, they seem like very positive people. They just say, this is who they are. And I aspire to be like that eventually.
That's lovely. Gentleman at the back.
You've been through what many would describe as a life-altering experience. Explain what appears to be your positive attitude, and what would your message be to others in your situation?
So you've been through what appears to be a life-altering experience. Can you explain for us your positive attitude and
Message for others.
message for others? What's your message for others?
Well, I think it's like I said earlier. It is a life-altering experience, and if I didn't have the support system in my family and friends that I do, I think I would be devastated. I don't think I would have a positive outlook. But it's so hard for me to focus on anything negative because they're always around. I have hardly any time to myself to really sit there and dwell on it. And if I do find myself, my mind kind of going there, I try to just turn it right around and say, you can't sit there and say, what if I arrived 5 minutes later or 5 minutes earlier, or what if I decided not to go to the game this year? And, I did think I did that for a little while, but, this is with the situation I'm faced with. It's not going to change. So for me to just kind of dwell on the negative is sort of a waste of time to me.
That's great. Yes, right here, Amy.
Heather, was there a point in this whole process where you thought you might be able to save the limb?
So the question is, was there a point in this whole process that you thought you might be able to save the limb? And I don't know if you want to start with Dr. Bloomin from a clinical standpoint.
I actually have a follow-up for Dr. Bloomin.
Okay, all right. Trying to give Heather a break here, but I guess we'll just keep letting Heather go.
There were points where I thought I would be able to keep it, especially at the beginning. When I went in for my first surgery, coming in, directly in from the bombing, doctors told me they needed to do a second surgery and really take a good look at it and determine if they were going to be able to save it or not. So until they did that surgery, I was thinking there was a possibility that I would be able to, until they actually did it and came back and said, you could, but you probably shouldn't.
And that would be my follow-up question for Dr. Bloomin. What's sort of the tipping point? We see a lot of these injuries, but they're coming out of war zones. So what is sort of the risk-benefit for the patients? Can you tell us how many patients like Heather's you've seen, and whose limbs are spared and whose aren't?
So give me a moment to just repeat the question. So the question for Dr. Bloomin is, what is the risk-benefit of making the decision to amputate, and have you seen many injuries like this, as these are typically things you see in war zones?
There's a lot of things that play into this, and it's very, very rare that the doctor makes the decision. We do everything to let the patient come to their own decision on this, because values for every separate patient are different, and keeping a limb may be very important to one, and the being a whole person, not losing any limbs, may be of the utmost importance, while for someone else, I think, like Heather, function is paramount. And so you have to balance those things, and everybody has their own separate value system and decision tree that they go through. As orthopedic surgeons and trauma surgeons, our job is not to make the decision, but rather to help the patient make the best decision for themselves. In terms of, I have the unfortunate experience of having a lot of experience with this, because I'm a war veteran, and I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And so I've seen a lot of these, and I guess the silver lining of that is that I think it helps me talk to the patient, understand the patient, and counsel the patient on what's the best decision for them.
Next question, woman in the orange.
I know you said you haven't been watching a lot of TV, but are you aware of the overwhelming support that's come from the city and from the country, and also your reaction to your visit with Michelle Obama?
So there's a two-part question. Are you aware of the overwhelming support coming from the community and the country? And can you talk a little bit about your visit with our First Lady, Michelle Obama?
I think I'm somewhat aware of the support that's coming from the state of Massachusetts, the country, just by the different things like the one fund that's been set up, the support from medical agencies, the amount of money that my friends have raised for me already in my fund is astonishing. So I do understand the support that's coming around. Second part of the
Could
question.
you talk a little bit about your visit with Michelle Obama?
Oh, yes. When I met Michelle Obama, it was relatively brief. I was under the influence of a lot of medication, so I wish I remembered it better. However, she came in, she was very nice. She told me she was sorry about the injury, talked to me and my family and friends for a little bit, who kind of gathered around the bed to hear her as well. She talked about the fact that she typically only gives this certain coin out to military personnel who are injured, and she actually gave one to me. So that was really nice. The visit was fairly brief, but she was a very nice lady. We had a nice conversation.
Great. Yes, in the corner here.
Three-part question, if I may.
Oh, come on, give me a break. Let's go one at a time.
They're all small.
Okay.
I wonder, have you found yourself getting angry at any parts along the way? Have you found yourself thinking differently about the purpose of your life at this stage? And have you been talking to God in this process at all?
All right, so let's start with the first one. Have you found yourself getting angry?
I have not. One of my friends that was with me, that happened, I was the only one of the 7 of us that were together that day that had any injuries, told me that she is feeling angry. And maybe I would if I had kind of let myself get into the details of the case a little bit more and the people who actually set off the bombs. I don't know. Eventually, I think I might get angry. I have not yet.
So the second part of the question was, has this experience changed how you view your purpose in life?
I guess so. I mean, I think if somebody told me that I was going to have to be out of work for, at least 2 months, and I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I typically do, before this, I would have been very upset about it. And I've kind of noticed, since I've been here, and with all the support of my family as well, that I can do that. That, some of these things are very trivial. I mean, certainly my job isn't. But the things that were so important to me that I would have been so concerned about missing, I'm missing them, and I have to. And I'm still happy. I'm still seeing all my friends and family. And so, I think that it's kind of made me realize some of the more important things in my life.
And the third part of the question was, have you been talking to God at all through this? And that's whether or not you feel comfortable. That feels a little personal to me, so we can move on if you don't, and if you'd like to, let's.
I have not been. I'm not particularly a religious person, so it's not, that wouldn't be an area that I draw strength from.
Let's come to you next, yeah.
Have you thought at all about what it might feel like to return to Boylston Street, and have you talked to family and friends about your plans for next year's marathon at all, to your tradition?
So the question is, have you thought at all about your return to Boylston Street, and have you talked at all with family and friends about continuing your tradition next year for the marathon?
We haven't talked about it, and I kind of thought about it a little bit myself, and I don't know how I'm going to react when I'm in a crowd like that again, just because when the first bomb went off and it triggered with me that this was a terrorist attack, I thought, of course it is. It's the Boston Marathon and all these people here. Of course this would be a place that terrorists would choose. And if I think I feel a little uncomfortable about being in a place like that again. I don't know if I still will next year. I don't know how my friends will feel. I mean, they've been so great to me, coming to visit me all the time, that they haven't talked to me a whole lot about how they feel. I know some of them have said that, they'd like to just kind of stay in for a while and kind of let things settle, and they were kind of jumpy the next few days after the attack.
Okay. Yes.
Just want to know, I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but is there a goal that either Heather has set or you have set for her to return home?
So the question is there a goal that either Heather has set or you, Dr. Bloomin, has set in terms of her return home? Who wants to go first?
My goal is as soon as possible.
We take no offense at that answer. Dr. Bloomin.
That's absolutely my goal, too. And the one thing that I want to make sure is that she is prepared to go home and doesn't have any setbacks or need to come back to either the hospital or rehab. So as soon as she's ready.
Allie, did you have another question?
Heather, are you nervous at all for the unbelievable amount of energy and hard work it will take to rehab? What are you wrapping your mind around there?
So the question is, are you nervous at all for the incredible amount of energy and effort it's going to take to go through rehab?
I think I am beginning to understand how much energy that is, and I am a little concerned about that. You know, I walked maybe 10 feet today on a walker, and you know, everybody was so proud of me, and I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be a long time. If this distance is something that people are proud of me at this point for. You know, I'm recognizing that, you know, I'm going to have some pain that is not going to be controlled, and it's going to take a long time to get to where I want to be. So that's going to be something that I have to live with, but
Okay.
it's something that I think about, yes.
Come to you right now. The question is, physically right now, how do you feel? And take your time with the water there. I can't believe they're not giving you a break. I brought Dr. Bloomin as a distraction, but apparently no one's interested. So physically, how are you feeling?
You know, I'm feeling okay. You know, the only pain that I have is where the leg was amputated. It's a really strange feeling. It seems to be getting better with each day. I sort of really did amaze myself with I guess the speed I was able to get out of bed today as compared to yesterday. So it's not easy. You know, otherwise physically I feel fine, but you know, I've definitely got some pain in that leg.
Sean, coming to you.
Heather, did the FBI or anyone else from law enforcement ask you to try to recap your day in terms of what you remember seeing around you?
So the question is, did the FBI or anyone in law enforcement ask you to try and recap your day and what you saw on that day?
Yes, they did. The FBI did, the Boston Police did, and the Massachusetts State Police.
Do you remember much about anything suspicious or anything like that?
The question is, do you remember much about anything suspicious?
I didn't. I mean, I had no idea something like this would happen. I was just, you know, standing in line to walk into a bar like I have a million different times, and in complete shock that happened.
Yes. I had a question in the back here. Yes, let's go to you again.
I just wanted to know, you said you used the walker today. For both of you, is that the first time you've done it? And for the doctor, is that normal? Does someone start doing that?
Okay, so let's start with Heather. You mentioned that today is the first time. Did you have a question for Heather, or was it just for the doctor? Okay, repeat it again. I apologize. Was today the first time, Heather, that you used the walker?
It's not, no. I think I used it for the first time the day after the surgery, which was Tuesday.
Tuesday. And Dr. Bloomin, is that expected? Would Tuesday be the right time for her to be getting up and
It's not
ambulating?
at all out of the realm of possibility, and depending on the patient's physiologic status and everything else that's going on, yeah, we encourage that. We want them to get up and around as soon as possible.
Great. In the back there?
Doctor, can you talk about what Heather can expect in 3 months, 6 months, 5 years, and how that compares to her life before last month?
So the question is, can you talk about what Heather can expect at 3 months, 6 months, and 5 years?
I think probably.
Closer to the mics, please.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the most exciting days is not too far away, and that's going to be in 2 weeks, because we placed a cast on Heather's amputated limb to really optimize the healing of the tissues. And when she gets that off, I think she's going to be quite happy. That's going to be in about 2 weeks from now. And then following that, she'll be able to start physical therapy and start moving her knee joint and building up the musculature around her pelvic girdle, which is going to be very important for her as she increases her activity level. As I mentioned previously, at the 6-week point, we're looking for her to move into a temporary prosthesis, and it's a trainer. It's for her to get up and around, get used to ambulating with a prosthesis, and start physical therapy with a prosthesis. And that will go on for a number of months, and then she'll move on to a permanent prosthesis, which will allow her to really do, have very little limitation in terms of her activity level and recreational life and exercise and everything.
Al, you had another question?
Dr. Bloomin, you talk about your experiences in Iraq. Had this not happened in Boston, had it not happened with so much experience from IEDs, would the outcome for these survivors have been different?
So the question is, had this not happened in Boston, would the outcome for the survivors have been different?
I don't know. There's some, this country has some really, really amazing medical resources. Boston is blessed, certainly, with an abundance of them, but there are some really great places around the country, and I don't know that it would be that much different. The one thing that I think is really advantageous here in Boston is we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of the trauma centers in this city and in the area. And when you look at the total number of people that were injured and brought into the hospital, it was triaged and divvied up very, very effectively. I mean, the first responders and the organizers did just an unbelievable job in doing that, and no one hospital was overburdened. And so each of these places, again, has a really rich complement of physicians, nurses, caregivers in general, and so we were able to handle the surge of patients very, very well.
Okay. We're going to do just a few more questions because I'm mindful of how long we've had Heather out of her room. So I'll start right here in the front row with you, and then I'll come back to you.
I have a question for Dr. Bloomin. Can you describe the options for permanent prosthetic, and is this new technology, and how good is it, and how does it work?
So the
Yeah.
question is, can you describe the prosthetics, and is there new technology, and how well does it work?
There's absolutely a lot of new technology out there, and there are multi-function prostheses, there are single-function prostheses, and Heather and I have been talking about some of those, and they range from prostheses that you can put on for scuba, prostheses that have special clips that fit onto bike pedals, so they're specific for biking. There are specific running prostheses, both long distance and sprinting. And the technology, even in what we would call a general prosthesis now, is amazing, with carbon fiber, different alloys, different ways of securing the prosthesis. I mean, everything from really stem to stern in the prosthesis has been incredibly moved forward incredibly fast. Unfortunately, because of our wartime experience, as well as other things, but really amazing potential for what you can do with a prosthesis now.
In the back row, you had a question?
Yeah, could you talk more about the limitations that you might have faced if you kept the foot, and how that differs from what you're looking at now?
So the question is, can you talk more about the limitations that you might have faced if you retained your foot, and how that differs from your outlook now?
Well, from what I understand, if I had kept my foot, I wouldn't have been able to really exercise at all. My feet would be two different lengths. I wouldn't have been able to bend it, and it would look like a mangled foot. I don't know, Dr. Bloomin, if you know of any other issues.
Yeah, I think Heather covered it. Basically, there would have been a massive difference in functionality. A lot of people worry about the cosmetic appearance of it, and certainly prosthesis doesn't look normal, but a limb that's undergone limb salvage in no way looks normal either. So there were a lot of things that fed into the decision and what she could expect, and I think she made a wonderful choice for her.
And without betraying our girl talk, we talked about high heel shoes. Heather is a very stylish fashionista, and the opportunity to wear high heel shoes again was, I think, better with prosthetic, right, Heather?
Exactly.
We women in our shoes, the things we do. Last questions? Anyone else? All right, so I'm gonna ask you to hold in place for a second. If I could ask the photogs to come this way, we're gonna clear a path for Heather and her family to exit with Dr. Bloomin. If anyone needs a space to be here on our hospital campus, hold on one second. For anything today, if you could just go back to the registration table, and someone from the media team, if you need stand-ups or whatever. Heather has been inundated with requests from media. We're going to ask if you have a request for Heather, contact the Brigham Media Relations team. We'll make sure that she's aware of it. Her medical team is asking her to take a little bit more time to continue her recovery, so she may not get back to you. We may not get back to you in 24 hours, but I assure you that all of your requests will get to Heather, and in due time she'll get back to you and let you know one way or another. Sound fair? Any other questions? We're going to go ahead and roll out. So, Melissa, if you could, Dr. Bloomin, would you